Welcome back to the Runner's Soul, where running meets science, stride by stride. I'm Sharon, your podiatrist host, and we've been getting to know each other for the last 6 episodes, and this is the last episode, unfortunately. But, we'll be back with more ideas very soon. So this is episode 6. And we're going to sort of end with some shoe sense, some myths, mistakes, and picking the right runners, because it's just so important, it can really make or break you. So, yeah, we'll talk about that. So if you've been with me for the last few episodes, we've been building a full body, a full mind approach to the running. And going back to episode 4, we got you strong and mobile from the ground up. In episode 5, we dialed in your recovery game so you could train smarter, avoid burnout, avoid injuries, and allow your body to rebuild stronger between runs. So now for our grand finale, drum roll. We're circling back to where a lot of runners start, but with a much more informed perspective. The running shoes. Now, here's the thing. Running shoes are often the most visible part of your gear, but they're also the most misunderstood. Runners, they get caught up in marketing claims, pro-athletic endorsements, and the latest trends, and we all get sucked in. And we forget that your shoes have to match your body and your running style, and not somebody else's. So, what might work for one person's not going to work for others. Be careful of your favorite athletes. Don't just wear something because they're wearing it. And you think, oh, well, they're wearing it. It must be really good. Well, no. You have to think they're getting paid millions to advertise that particular training shoe. So it might not even be something that they wear when they're not advertising the shoes. And you have to also be aware there are some companies, like huge companies, like, Nike's one of the biggest ones. Puma, they're one of the biggest ones. But their training shoes are pretty shit, to be honest with you. There really isn't enough support in them, and definitely not for running. So we have to bust the most common shoe myths. We'll unpack the mistakes that send runners to my clinic, and we'll walk you through what I actually look for when I help a runner pick the right pair of shoes. So, by the end of this episode, you'll not only know what works for you, you'll also know how to avoid falling for the hype and wasting your money, basically. And if you've been injured before, this is especially important for you, because this could be the missing link in keeping you healthy on the road, on the trail, or the track, and to prevent any more injuries. So let's talk about some shoe myths that really need to die. So let's start with a few myths that we hear all the time, every single week in clinic. So the first one that everyone believes is that everyone needs arch support. Well, they don't really, because some feet thrive with it, others do better without it. And look, there's lots of patients that have come to me, they've been to see other podiatrists, they've spent a fortune on orthotics, and they've made their feet feel worse. And then the podiatrist has said, oh, we'll make some adjustments. they're the wrong ones for you. Let's get you new ones. And they're all the same. So I don't want you to fall into that same trap. So slapping arch support into every shoe can actually make some runners weaker over time by letting the muscles in your arch switch off. So that's not really what we want. The second myth is more cushioning is better protection. Well, it does sound logical, right? But if your shoes have over cushioning, then they can reduce your ground feel. They can throw you off your natural gait and even encourage sloppy form and gait because your brain isn't getting the same feedback from the ground. So that's an important point to remember. So myth 3, you should run in what elite runners wear. Well, look, I love watching the elites fly by in their carbon-plated super duper shoes too. But those shoes are tuned for very specific biomechanics, training loads, and also, what they're going to be running on for the tracks. And for many recreational runners, this can just be total overkill. And it can even lead to injuries because, you're just not conditioned for those conditions. So the next myth is zero drop shoes fix everything. Well, zero drop shoes can feel great for some people, but they can put more strain on your ankles and your calves. And if you switch too quickly, you could be sidelined for weeks. So the bottom line is there's no single perfect shoe. If there was, I would be rich. There's only the shoe that's perfect for you, your mechanics, and your goals. And so the shoe has to fit the purpose. So let's talk about some key things to look for when you're buying shoes for running. When I help a runner choose shoes, here's what I usually assess. So the first thing is the foot shape and width. A wide foot needs a very roomy toe box. A narrow foot needs a secure midfoot hold. Then we'll look at the arch structure and collapse. Have you got a high arch, a flat foot, a flexible or a rigid foot? This changes how your foot loads and how the shoe should support you. Pronation pattern. Not to label you an overpronator or a supinator, but to see if your shoes need to work with or correct some sort of anomalies in your mechanics. And then we have to take into consideration your running surface and your mileage. So are you a pavement pounder? Are you a trail lover? Are you a 5K fun run or ultra marathon? And we have to look at your terrain and the volume because they really, really matter. Then we have to look at your injury history, a history of plantar fasciitis. Is that an issue for you? Have you had a history of shin splints, stress fractures? These can all be clues as to the type of shoe you need, type of support, and it will definitely determine your shoe choice. So next we'll look at the toe box, and it's very important to have a lot of room in your toe box because your toes need space to spread and that helps with your balance. And then we'll look at the heel drop and stack height. So the height difference between your heel and your toe changes your posture and how your muscles will load. So the goal here isn't to find the best shoe on the market or the most expensive. It's to find the shoe that makes your run better, you recover well, and for you to stay injury-free. So something else to consider is your gait analysis versus your shoe sales. Now, most running shoes stores do a basic treadmill gait assessment, and that's helpful, but it's just a small snapshot. Now, if you were to go into clinic and have a consult with a podiatrist, they would go into your gait a little bit deeper. They'll look at things like how you walk and run. What's your muscle strength and endurance? Do you have any muscles that are weak? And they'll look at your hip and your ankle and your big toe and see what kind of mobility you have. See if you have good stance, if you have good balance, how your shoes interact with your body over time, not just in the store. And that's how we match the shoe to you, not just to a trend, because a 30-second jog on a treadmill can't predict how your shoes will feel at mile 20 of your long run or marathon. So, what are the biggest mistakes that can lead to injury? Well, here are some of the biggest shoe mistakes that I see, very common, and they can cost you months of training if you make these mistakes. So, number one is switching too fast. So, especially to minimalist or carbon plated shoes, your body needs a little bit of time to adapt. So, it can't really cope with extremes. So, if you're running barefoot 1 minute and then you go into really supportive shoes, or the other way around, your body is going to be in shock. Wearing worn out shoes. Now, if your midsole is compressed or the thread's gone, it's probably time to say goodbye to those old shoes. Also, the wrong shoe for the job. Like if you're wearing trail shoes on the road or vice versa. And not rotating shoes. Try and use some different pairs, some slight changes in the load on your tissues. And this reduces all the repetitive stress. And it means then your feet are just not getting used to just that one pair of shoes. Because, if you wear the same pair of shoes, they may still look okay, but they will have lost some of their shock absorbency. They will have lost some of their cushioning, the protection. So, don't scrimp for the sake of another pair of shoes. So the golden rule is ease into any changes and replace your shoes every 500 to 800 kilometers, depending on your running style and the shoe model, or every year. So whatever comes sooner. So if you're not sure if your shoes are helping or hurting or hindering you, make an appointment with your podiatrist and bring them into the clinic. They'll do an in-depth shoe assessment, gait analysis, and load testing. So bring everything with you. Bring your orthotics, bring your old pairs, bring your new pairs, and they will help you figure out exactly what your feet need to thrive. Well, guys, that wraps up episode 6. Our first full series together. And I'm very sad. I hope you've enjoyed yourself as much as I have. And I'm looking forward to when we can tune in and have another episode, either on this subject or we'll pick some other subjects, some other similar subject that you would be interested in. So if you have any ideas, anything you feel that we haven't covered, then send us a message and we would be delighted to answer any of your questions. So we started off from the very first episode. We've been building it up layer by layer. We started with the foundation, understanding your feet. We talked about the tools, your shoes. We built your strength and mobility in episode 4. We mastered recovery in episode 5. And now we've brought it back to full circle to help you pick the right runners for your running. So if you've been with me since episode 1, Thank you. Truly, this podcast has been about helping you run better, smarter, and healthier, and also prevent injuries. That's the main thing. And seeing so many of you apply these tips has been the best part. We've had amazing feedback, and it just makes me so happy. So we may be wrapping up this series, but your running journey doesn't end here. So keep asking questions, keep listening to your body, keep listening to our podcasts, and remember, running smart isn't about doing more, it's about doing better. So if you've enjoyed this series, let me know, share it with your running friends, leave us a review, or send us in a topic that you'd like to cover in a bonus episode. So, until then guys, run smart, feet first, always. Catch you on the next episode of our podcast, whenever that might be and whatever subject that might be. That's a surprise. So, I'll see you all then.